Hello, 2322. The term is winding down, so I'm getting ready to do our last reading, which is the play William Shakespeare's The Merry Wives of Windsor, which is funny and goofy. It's a farce, but critics along the way have argued that it might be Shakespeare's worst play. As the urban legend goes, Queen Elizabeth saw Henry IV Part 2, fell in love with the character of Falstaff, who's fat and drunk and wild. Sometimes my students say a little bit like me, but the Queen fell in love with the character. And as the urban legend goes, she requested Shakespeare to write a play with Falstaff in love. And supposedly this play was written in 2 weeks with that in mind. As we think about Falstaff, which is the heart and soul of this play, it seems like back in the day, wild and crazy drunk guy, all the other characters loved him. If he's trying to seduce someone else's wife, he's borrowing money, whatever, he's dressed in a costume, whatever he's doing, it seemed like 1600 people like that. Maybe when I was younger, 1980s or so, 90s, people like that too. But maybe with the advent of the computer or whatever you want to give it up to, it seems like people are a lot more serious in 2020. I mean, I understand about the virus, but modern audience don't seem to like Falstaff as much as older audiences did. And I think that's an interesting concept. It might be too long a paper for you to write for this class, but I am kind of intrigued that back in the day, he was fat and jolly and everyone got a kick out of him, but now everyone's serious. But I wanted to go down the theme sheet. The play is certainly a spoof of Elizabethan values. These are upper middle class people, upper middle class couples, and it seems like they laugh and have fun and have parties and marry their daughters. Women especially, it seems like women, upper middle class women of the period, the highlight of their life was getting married and having babies. So prime time for them is having suitors when they're 17, 20, 22, picking what suitor. And, excuse me, it usually connects to money. So he's certainly spoofing Elizabethan values, the way they talk, the way they dress. I would say as I go down the list, number 6 says it's Shakespeare's most contemporary play. Some of the same critics that say it's his worst play also say it's written in real 1600 time. So the way the characters talk, the way they dress, the inside jokes, there's not a lot of history written on 16th century Great Britain. Some critics, when they read or write about the play, use it to read what the world was like in 1600 more so than reading it as a comedy. So you could potentially do that too. In this section, I included an outline about comedy versus drama. And Aristotle famously said comedy was ugly and ridiculous. In a tragedy, the men are in charge. It's war, it's murder, it's money, it's countries and politics, and it's serious. In a comedy, women are in charge, and that's certainly true here. And my note says in a comedy, it goes from order to chaos to order. Also, if you notice in this play, the women are strong, control the money, are hip to Mistress Page and Mistress Ford, are hip to whatever Falstaff tries to do to them. The men are vain and stupid and jealous in some cases. So it certainly sets up along those lines: tragedy, serious, men in charge; comedy, fun, light, women are in charge. And if you're the playwright, maybe if you're Shakespeare and you want to make deep, feminist points, political points. You do it in a comedy, put women in charge, put women in charge of the money, in charge of the household, because it's a comedy and everyone's laughing and no one's taking them seriously. And again, a comedy has a happy ending. There's usually a marriage. If I get to the plot, which is pretty basic, again, supposedly Shakespeare wrote this in 14 days for the Queen. Shakespeare writing about Falstaff in love. So Falstaff is titled, he's a rich guy, but he's fat and broke, and he plans to seduce these two wealthy married women, Mistress Page and Mistress Ford. He writes them identical love letters. Doesn't really matter which one he gets. He's a con man. He's trying to get money. So yeah, and a servant tips them off. Mistress Page and Mistress Ford are best friends. They know what Falstaff's trying to do, and they play along and trick him. I should note that Master Page, the husband, is stable and a nice guy, but Master Ford is jealous. He thinks his wife's cheating on him. He gets tricked and he gets lightly punished as well. But as the story goes along, Falstaff's in a laundry basket, gets dumped in the river. At one point, he's in drag, dressed as a woman. At another point, he's dressed as a beast of the woods and gets beaten. So he's a fool. He gets punished, but it's kind of light and fun, not really serious. And the subplot is Anne Page, the daughter, has a bunch of suitors. And these different men are hitting on her, like want her to marry them. Some of them, pay attention to what Shakespeare does with foreign accents, too. It reminds me a bit of Monty Python. If you ever saw Monty Python, but if you're reading it out loud, the Monty Python character in The Meaning of Life would be, I thought in your general direction. I didn't do that very well, but he's making fun of the French accent. So the subplot, all these different suitors want Anne. She loves Fenton. Her parents give her advice. This guy has more goats, marry for money. But ultimately, she marries Fenton for love. And there's a happy ending. Falstaff is a good sport, too. They play jokes on him, but he rolls with it. I get to the theme sheet. It says money, morality, marriage. And this might be true for Texas in 2020. Is there anything wrong with marrying for money? And again, if you're a woman in 1600, you're middle class, the highlight of your life is the husband you choose. So do you choose someone you love? Do you choose someone that's rich? What's that process like? Ideally, you would be someone you love and someone who was rich. And that applies to Texas in 2020 as well. So yeah, there's some feminist themes, like what I said before. Women are in charge. The women are smarter than the men. The women control the money too. So, and again, it's a comedy, so we're supposed to be laughing, but Shakespeare might be sticking some subtle points in there about how smart and strong women are. But middle class life seems like an easy life too. They giggle, they have fun, they gossip, they have parties. Who's my daughter going to marry? It's light. It's not a difficult life. And you can also compare them to some of the lives of the servants in the play. And it's much more difficult. Perhaps you could write a play about the social cast in the play. And then at the end of this, I wanted to go over the major characters. Again, Sir John Falstaff is titled, but my note says Fat Drunk Fool. Everyone in the play likes him. He might be one of the most famous, most popular characters in all of Shakespeare because he's a con man, he's drunk, but it doesn't seem like 2020 in the time of COVID, people like that, women like that. Fenton is Anne Page's true love, a suitor, and he marries her at the end. Shallow is a country justice that doesn't like Falstaff, wants to play a trick on him, and is Slender's uncle. Slender is one of the suitors that thinks he's in love with Anne, but obviously she shouldn't marry him. Ford is a middle-class landowner, and he's a jealous husband, and he doesn't necessarily give his daughter Anne good advice about who she should marry. Master Ford, I mixed that up. Master Page is a normal, good guy. Master Ford is the one that gets jealous, and he's tricked as well. Forgive me for not doing that again, but I've been shooting videos for a long time, and I'm tired. Dr. Caius is French. He's one of Anne's suitors. He has a heavy accent, so he talks like a Frenchman. So maybe if you want to enjoy the play, when you get to his parts, read it out loud. In my face-to-face classes, I tell the students that and let them volunteer for that part. And usually the biggest ham in class would volunteer to be Dr. Caius. Simple is Slender's stupid servant. Mistress Ford and Mistress Page are best friends. They're the smartest, strongest, most capable characters in the play. They're on to Falstaff. They're on to their husbands. They manage the money well. They're the heroines of the play. Maybe Anne is too. Anne Page is the pretty page daughter. She has all these suitors. At the end, she marries for love. She marries Fenton. Mistress Quickly is the servant of Dr. Caius. She is gossipy and uses poor English. So again, like, you might have to know language, but that wouldn't be a bad theme. What's Shakespeare doing with language and accents and making fun of other countries? The host at the Garter Inn is kind of a trickster. He tricks Falstaff at the beginning, but he gets tricked at the end. Another man who gets lightly punished. And then Sir Hugh Evans is a Welsh parson. He has a heavy accent. So again, I wouldn't necessarily call this Shakespeare's best play, but it's light and airy and funny. You can read it for contemporary 1600 British culture, and I think the young feminist will like it because the women are in charge, they are capable, they handle the men well, and I think Shakespeare is subtly making points about women's rights. Okay, bye.